Hello FOnline players. This video about fundamentals of MMORPG and what makes FOnline good and not so good game in terms of MMORPG. This video has my personal point of view how I see things. Basic structure of MMORPG are: progression, customization, immersion, competition, cooperation, community. Progression, character progression, gear progression, player's skill progression. RPG need progression-driven system to be successful. When progression reaches its end, players tend to lose motivation, because there is nothing new to achieve in terms of progress further. For me personally, progression is strongly driving me to play. To keep myself motivated, I set myself a goals which I am working to reach. This can be some skill like learning to better on different builds, collecting items like Elvis paintings and daisies, or just decorating your base. It is up to yourself to set your goals and work for it. FOnline2 provide quite long progression journey. Top and most rares items takes years of work to get. But in couple of months of active playing, player can reach like 80% of potential progression in terms of character and tier 3 gear. The longest progression in this game is player own skill and understanding of game mechanics. Quickly viewed game looks very simple, but there is so many layers of mechanics that it is actually really complex. Most old-time players still are not able to understand many basic things. This could be because they lack of brain capacity or just will to learn. Maybe they just want to relax, chill and hang around with friends, and that is totally okay. Customization, freedom to personalize player gaming experience, character builds, perks, skills, gear selection are backbone of RPG. Individualism when player can modify their character appearance, skins, builds and playstyle the way he prefer. Providing role-playing elements. Player can role-play a stupid ugly mutant, cyberdog, citizen of NCR, or almost anything he desire. Current customization options are not the best possible. It will provide limited number of quizzes, and current meta builds are all the pretty much same for everyone. More is not always better, but when most of playable characters share always the same must have perks and special points, there is something wrong in character system. Some individual do invent new ways to combine specific builds with some type of gear bonuses and carefully thought out playstyle, then they can do miracles and stand out from others. One thing I really like is that there is really many counter character builds and use of builds available for different situations, so it is up to players to find opportunities to use them effectively. There is no best build for everything. Many builds are best only in their intended use. Players have to wait between three main things when building a character: 1. Tankiness, 2. Damage dealing, and 3. Other supportive skills. These supportive skills vary a lot, but for example it can be either more perception, which helps to make better decisions, or more healing capacity for team play purposes, or just more carry weight for looting. Immersion. Game's ability to draw players into its world. Immersion consists of so many things together, but when succeed, it will glue players into the game so tight that they are living in the game world instead of real world. Few things which affect immersion are game lore, quest design, dynamic and game events, creative and clever conversations, and the actual feel of game world. Wasteland is harsh and you can only learn it by facing hard reality. Getting killed hundreds of times is part of learning progress. If dying and losing all your shit is no for you, then this game is not for you. Maybe next time take your friends with you, so at least you can share together the pain of losing your items. Shared emotions, whether bad or good, are powering the feeling of togetherness. Competition, cooperation, and community. This is multiplayer game, therefore for solo players competition opportunities are much more limited. Game has competitive game systems like town control, many type of events, and total server domination through pure player skill and grinding best possible gear and being most active as a whole faction. Some like to compete for 1 versus 1 burster tournaments and hone their skills in that, or fight outnumbered and make cool Rambo videos. Game provide many ways for players to compare their virtual cocks for each others, let it be gathering most numbers of player in their faction, idling in safe town, wearing most rarest armor, looting most items, or just grind most achievements. Factions can increase their competitive powers by training their member, recruiting more noobs on their ranks, or just refine their battle tactics. Getting faction working perfectly is one of the hardest things in FOnline. Having players all around the world speaking different languages sets some barriers for understanding each other's and action leaders' commands. Setting common goals for players which they can achieve only as together, This will encourage players to cooperate in order to get something they would not be able to get alone. Hardest dungeons in game can only be done with group of people who really are well prepared. The least players you able to do certain fight or dungeons means more loot split up for less players. Risk and reward aspect is there, but usually this can be bypassed by grinding really hard and playing a lot. Good thing is that after certain point, benefits for this are very marginal. Best and organized factions have their hierarchy well planned, leaders, designated sneakers or roles for certain players. Everyone to fill their role in best possible ways leaders see they could fill it. You take Burster and you should take RL, this one guy is commanded to check our back for covering team from sneaks attacks. When something is important for individual it will raise deep emotions, therefore you cannot avoid dramas. It is amazing how much there is drama all around and in every faction. This will increase the difficulty of keeping factions as together. Player with loose loyalties tend to change their faction often and they usually join the strongest available at that point. Charismatic leaders seems to be major ingredient of Sucker's Fall faction. This has even come to the point that some players refuse to play unless their leader is online. I love the feeling when faction actually managed to success throughout the hard work and well executed plans and not because the enemy faction played bad. In other hands when faction doing not so Sucker's Fall and getting wrecked many fights in row, it will diminish players' feelings and motivations. Depend on player resilience this often lead to Ragakit. We all together form a community. Without other things would be totally different, without enemies you would not have anything to compete against. Having same core community and knowing your friends and enemies you are like a big family. Community brings out best and worst part of individuals. Lot of toxicity and some really nice guys and girls with amazing skills. It is up to you to find your own place there. Good community, whether inside faction or whole games community makes players to coming back to game even after long breaks even if the game have not been updated for a long time. Good community keeps players motivated and of course it is more fun to do activities together than alone. Economy is player driving and it's still kicking hard. As long as in-game money has its value, economy is running. There is some money sinks which players keep spending their in-game monies. Most players are poor in terms of money no matter how much they play, but loot piles and bases just keep growing bigger and bigger. If faction get too strong and dominate everything, it will become really boring for them. It is up to players to control the power situations in server and temporary alliances to beat the common stronger enemy is often used. One thing is sure that MMO is built around competition, cooperation and community. If this game would be single player only, no one would play same game for years after years. I know many current players have played this game almost 10 years already and still keep playing, therefore there is many great and some not so great stories to tell. End of this video I will tell you few interesting stories. Many players are criticizing lack of updates. If you understand human mind then you can understand that. Players always require more and more and are really never satisfied. It does not matter how much you give them. Give more loot, buff this, add this etc. When updates are not providing enough new to players it is up to players to find themselves to find something to do. Even whiteout constant updates, this game has reached a really stable state which players do enjoy to play. What does players could do if they already reach the full progression and there is no enemies to fight and no updates in sight? Well most players not playing then and only join if called in TeamSpeak/Discord for PvP. One big downside of this game that it reward for playing as safe as possible and swarm everything with more numbers. This kills the fun for swarmers, because no challenges and for these who get swarmed by 10 times more players, because there is not many options to fights against without similar number of players. It really is not very motivational for players that when they are trying to leave dungeon, there is 10 players waiting him with explosives. Yes, it is part of game, but huge amount of players have quit this game because this exact issue. Another thing is that game is not very noob friendly and some mechanics are from last century. Old players have used to these and know how to use things, but for newer generation of gamers it is really hard to learn and get into this game. Most new players are not willing to learn old clunky mechanics and can stand the constant dying. Learning curve is really long to master this game. Maybe with help of friends/groups/factions it will be easier and more fun. I have high hopes on next season, new engine and remade everything from nothing. This sounds like a good opportunity and it has huge potential to become very successful MMORPG. Video is getting into end and it is time for some players' stories. For some reason FOnline players are very unique and special type of people. Game tend to draw them together. Some are very clever and intellectual individuals and some totally opposite. Stories are mostly true stories, but when stories are told then there is always a bit flavors added into them. Once there was a player who loved the looting so much that it made him most famous looter in game. He usually had looter characters prepared for every single location. Constantly logging in, checking location and looting all that was available. In the end he forced himself to quit game, because game took too much of his time. Even today his legend's still living in the game and you can see his character in game which are currently used as most successful apprentice. Second story is about player who is able to play 22-hour a day in 2 servers at same time. He got himself fired from job, so he could focus on playing more. He is one of the most top farmers in game and really loved to have all possible achievements. He was also one of the best players in terms of mechanics. Recently his main character which had almost 300 million experience points and in this must have caused some sort of lost motivation. I am unsure how much played hours that exactly is, but it could be couple of thousands wasted hours just for farming. Can you even imagine how does it feels if your 3,000 hours worth of playing will be flushed down in the toilet, just like that with couple of clicks? I cannot imagine it, but if must make a guess then it must have feel like getting mentally raped in the ass. Then there was a player who really loved trading. He kept trading for multiple years. All the shops you visited in game were very often out of caps, because this one individual did his trading runs. By his own words, he made about 500,000 caps per day. He might have been the most richest man in the wasteland. His story ends when his wife take actions to her own hands in order to save their relationship. She log into his account and keep adding random players into his base, where he stashed all the items. For these players it is like opportunity to fill all their pockets on this treasure base. There was so much items that it took hundreds of rounds and lot of time to clean this base from wealth. Don't know how was their relationship continued after that, but for sure he was not playing anymore at least for a while. When current season started, there was a player that played 50 hours straight without sleeping. Well, that player was me.